Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves an EP from an act named BodyWithout, titled DEITY. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves 5 tracks, starting with exorcism / IU or Thin 6, all the way through to CODA / double dot colon indifferent, should I say. Got the art up here for you to check out. We're going to listen through this track from this EP, should I say, from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with exorcism, let's go. I love how that's processed and how wide it is. That transition to that sub bass with the sequencer is kind of dope as well. You got me. You got me. That was incredible. That is awe-inspiring. That hits you like a train. Oh, this... Dude, that was fun. So I've listened to this track a few times. I'm not getting all the words through clearly, but some of them that I did get through were dreaming about death. And at some point, I think it never exits left, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. So I'm wondering if that's sort of saying that we can't really escape from it. But then we get into that kind of harder kind of growled part. So I'm wondering if that's just like an extreme frustration with the fact that we're having these dreams in the first place. That's such an incredibly heavy song. It's so fluffy with the little sequences and sort of like muffled kind of misty keys and stuff. And it does sort of sound like a dream sequence, to be fair. The vocals within this song, they start in a way that's very kind of, there's a bit of kind of grit and grain to it, but it's still kind of floral, and we harmonize neatly with the established arpeggios and progressions. And then when the heaviness comes in, just that scream, that growl, the guttural, visceral tone of that is just ferocious. And we go between the high and low ranges as well. So like immediately we're showing that, you know, we're showcasing our proficiency in that regard. It's just also on top of the really sort of stellar vocal technique and the fact that we are sort of micro niching this 2-minute 15 track. It's just so, it's incredibly, I love the structuring of it. It is more an adventure rather than relying on an ABA structure, which I think it would be okay for a song of this length. But here we're not even taking a risk with that. We are going boom, boom, A, B, C. You know, and it kind of makes you wonder on your first listen basis, what else have we got going on? What else is to come? It's very exciting. And it's just the fact that when you've got those guitars that come in with the down-tuned distorted, like John, like those fast alternate picked palm muted parts, it's just ferocious. The drums with a wide variety of different the machine gun double kicks, the snares, the fills, just the ability to go from normal time to half time with the breakdowns and stuff like that. It's awesome. But it's also coupling that or contrasting that with the slower pace of those mid to higher end resonances with the synth textures or key textures earlier there. The sub bass sequencing itself in the low end, almost like a heartbeat or some kind. It's almost hypnotic, and then you get destroyed by that first sort of visceral bit of vocal fry, and you just cut for the loop. The dream switches to something far more feral and intense, but in a really positive way. And I really appreciate the proficiency in the rhythm section across the different quarter, 8th, 16th, and triplet note grooves there. We're very comfortable navigating a part where we do have some guitar arpeggios as well, I think, is in earlier on. But a lot of it is sort of sub-layering until you get the more kind of hard-hitting elements a bit later on. It's just, but as a progressive piece, I think it suits really well. I think just in terms of the actual, if we treat it as more of a dream sequence going between different parts of one, I think that works well thematically there. It's minor-oriented, but you get different layers of the sadness going into potential fury or anger in that latter part where things pick up and kind of slap you in the face. The production as well is stellar. I appreciate what's going on in terms of like sometimes the guitars, for example, aren't even there. We're just trying to sort of like make it chaotic and kind of like mess with the filtering and EQing of certain instruments and stuff like that as well, which is really neat. And I think that just when you couple all these different fundamentals together and with the understanding that some of them are sort of like transcendent or just really fantastic, like really just genuinely impressive, it's very positive. And then we've got track number 2 here at 2 minutes 28, another shorter one here. Woo. Use of flat seconds is so tense, man. I love this. It's abyssal, man. But how are we going to finish it? I mean, like, the sound design is absolutely friggin' ridiculous. That last part, we had the boop, and then we had, like, the radio chatter on different side, and then we have the different voice and stuff. There's just this entire galaxy being created within the song. Holy shit, man. My Heart Bleeds For You is spectacular. I love it. I just appreciate how we started Exorcism just a little bit in a more of a soothing manner. This one, out the gate, trying to kick your head in. It was just vicious, but in a way where we did not kind of like mess about getting that kind of frying those growls and screams and stuff like that. And we played around with sub drops and stuff. What do I think this track is about? I do really feel as though now that we're in this stream, we are really sort of expressing our disgust and hatred towards someone. Maybe we're kind of exhibiting feelings we can't really control towards this. Maybe we're discussing ourselves. I'm not sure. I would need another time through to get all the lyrics clearly. Part of the reason why, even though I was listening to the lyrics, I'm not super duper confident I have 100% of the context, just because of how well the song slammed. Again, at 2 minutes 28, it's so short. But we had another little adventure where we didn't sort of stick too much or rely too much on a specific riff or drum groove or whatever. We really did sort of like just kind of go this D, E, F, etc. And it's like the song, you just think, hey, how much heavier can this get? Because again, you had that vocal style with similar comments I made on the previous track. Then we even had like a thing in the middle structurally where it sounded like an Arctic Monkeys song or something like that, a vocal line from one of those tracks. And we slapped that away back into dun dun. It's brutal, dude. But it's done in a way where it's less familiar to me, I think, in part because a lot of the metalcore and kind of stuff that I listen to nowadays, it does rely on that more traditional verse chorus structure with bridges and maybe like a solo section. This is far more organic. It literally is, hey, this is another, like, this is a chunky riff. Here's another chunky riff. Oh, we have a voice line here, split bam into that. Oh, we have a couple more situations like that. We don't necessarily revisit that first half. Oh, now we've got the boo, that sine wave, and then into different sort of like, it is a dream sequence. It really is you going through your own self there, I think. And I just think that production-wise, consistent quality as well. I'm going to have some overall comments in the conclusion, but just per song, this one, I just appreciate the combination of the different Foley elements as well as what's going on with it just again, like the vocal technique as well, knowing not sort of thrash our throat too much. It sounds like something they're going to be able to sustain. The guitars did these tremendous, like going between the lower to the down tune string, then those flat second chords, and just for immense tension, did a 4 natural harmonic sort of sweep there. Just a lot of the staples of similar genres done in a way which still seems familiar, less familiar because of the structuring. Because again, I think we had like a higher pitch one. Like it's just so cool, man. I'm gushing about this. It's fantastic. And I think when you talk about the subject matter thematically, I think you couldn't get away with having music this heavy, especially when you're discussing the things that you feel about someone. You either go completely antithetical of it, even so like in the sense that you're saying that you don't care about these people and just so done with them, and then that's how you can have that vitriol, or you balls to the wall, just this, and they smashed it, and again, production wise, it's tight. In general, I think I'm actually having a very rare situation where I'm actually having fun with an EP that I'm reviewing. So I'm going to try and still be balanced with that. But exCision again, one. Let's go. Great fourth harmonies there. Okay, and back to that, okay. And we're messing with time signatures now as well, which is just tremendous. And just having a tom drum fill there just to switch things up. Oh. Are we allowed to do that? That's actually a good point. So we have the track there. Is that BodyWithout's track? Is that another one they've made? It's, yeah. That you can hear the driving in the car and everything like that. Okay. Wow. So how do we interpret excision again? I'm not sure. I didn't get a lot of those words through clearly, I'm afraid. I did listen intently to it. I think part of what made this a little bit intriguing was having structurally that synth section at the end there. We kind of go to sort of more of a house-ish kind of like track, almost like we kind of had lines from another song, And My Heart Bleeds For You. It does kind of wonder whether we're revisiting tracks we've sort of dreamt about in our own head and trying to sort of figure out how they move into the context of what we're discussing. At some point, they talk about devouring in that sort of like sung part by the lady at the end, and then Something Won't Save You is screamed a bit earlier than that. So I'm wondering if My Heart Bleeds For You is talking about their feelings for someone, and now they're like, no one will save you from this. I might be dreaming this, but I am dreaming of your demise, so to speak. So it goes without saying that the vocals are still incredibly well handled across this track as well. I think part of what makes this song interesting is that you're going to use that Foley, as I mentioned earlier, that song at the end. I was wondering how much of that you can get away without there being sort of like copyright issues, unless it's a band they made originally. It's kind of nice. Maybe we're thinking back on that band. Maybe that's music we made when we're back in the earlier band or something like that. I'm not sure because I just don't recognize the song. But I mean, either way, I do think that sound of that driving is meant to sort of be maybe the dream sequence that they had, you know, like imagining driving and then that music sort of surrounding that. The horrific abyssal sort of like heavy metal, kind of having little interlude and little kind of quirky bits, like lighter, fluffier parts. And I think that having that stuff filtered just again makes it more structural interesting, but also it's a testament to the production being able to incorporate not only a sense of dynamic range within the piece, but also being able to sort of make it sort of niche itself in and sort of help yourself to immerse further with the piece, especially if you're not necessarily a massive fan of the heavy stuff. You could, oh, okay, but then we're in this zone, this chapter now. Maybe we're in a car now. Are we driving somewhere positive? Is this negative, etc.? And so you just treat it to a cavalcade of really intriguing tidbits that keeps you sort of clinging along for more. I've got no complaints about the production. I think the extra instrumental performance from the guitar, bass, drums, you know, vocals, and the way that mixed and mastered, as well as the different synth and key parts as we go along, is just incredibly well done. You know, lots of creativity there. And we have The Still of Evening Light, track number 4. Use anchoring that, but then
First contact, swear it all falls apart.
Okay, and here's the plot twist. Even slower. So the Still of Evening Light, what do I think this is about? Because this is another vicious one. With this one, the Still of Evening Light, they talk about first contact, and they say there's no fucking way, and you just get the impression as you go through that we're really just so confrontational. We just really, maybe the dreams are our first contact, and we are just struggling to cope with what we're being shown there. And we're not going to take that. And a lot of the heaviness and brutality that comes through across this EP is more a representation either of uncomfortable truths that we're having a sort of severe reaction to, or simply that our dreams are challenging us, and we are just having to sort of cope with them regardless of whether we deserve it or not. I think that, again, we've got a similar vocal fry to previous tracks here, and I think that works well. The sample in the middle part, talking about the first contact and everything like that, is a cool idea because it helps to give further context and understanding to what's being sung, especially people who may not be as familiar with that kind of growly style and may not understand it as easily. I like the fact that with each of these tracks, we've done something like that, sort of like spruce it up, make it a little bit more sort of, give it added depth and context and stuff. Everything is really cool, but it just gets slower over time. Like at the end, that final breakdown, we kind of slip it by like 5 BPM, and just structurally, it's another through composed piece. But it just goes, it just gets so like it's like a Leviathan. It weighs you down. It suffocates you. That truth there, that dream kind of pin you down, and you trying to pin the dream down, etc. It's such a wonderful little excursion we're having. I think, again, if you're not as familiar with the genre, or you're not a fan of the aggressive vocals, it might not necessarily be an album that you really, really, really love, or an EP that you really, really love, but I enjoy it because I appreciate how raw and unfiltered it is, but also the creativity in regards to sort of stitching these different riffs and bass lines and drum patterns together. The fact that we have those bits of foley for extra context. The actual theme itself, sticking with sort of almost a chromatic feel with no care given to avoiding specific uncomfortable notes or semitonal parts or whatever, those flat second chords are still there. And we also have these almost sort of Parkway Drive-esque kind of suddenly moving into the second bottom string and having some melodic sort of mid-range portions there that sparkles. It makes it sparkle just a little bit. We had more of it in exCision Again 1 or exCision Again I, but still, the Still Evening Light is fantastic, and I adore it. Maybe it's about waking up and realizing what you've dreamed and coming to terms with that. I'm not sure, but production-wise, same comments about it. Thematically minorish with flat seconds and Phrygians and stuff like that. It's par for the course, but it's done really effectively. We have CODA INDIFFERENT, track number 5 for today. I mean, that's just an inherently pleasant sequencer there. I got goosebumps. That lady's a fantastic singer. I love the... Great use of an 808 there as well, man. Okay, I get it. So is it I think this has kind of tied things up quite well, CODA, Indifferent. I think I get what this album EP is about, should I say, a little bit better, but we're going to talk about this track before the overall conclusion. So I think CODA Indifferent is more, it iterates certain lines we had at the start, and I think we're looking back on it and trying to sort of like gain a sort of an understanding and awareness of it. Like the lady sings "There's no replacing you," so I'm wondering if maybe he's been talking about the lady. Maybe the lady is in the dream there. That's why we had the lady singing in that part. We had like first confrontation is maybe like the first sort of contact is what the guy was talking about there. And maybe we're sort of fighting ourselves in regards to how we kind of cope with how they think about us. Maybe we're trying to find some self-worth within ourselves and this woman's trying to help us, or maybe we felt like we weren't good enough for them. I'm not sure. There's a whole lot of different ways to approach it. But I really appreciated having the ladies' vocals on their own there. And I just think that they sang really well. It was a nice foil, a nice contrast to the main clean vocals from the dude. And it was a really different feel to this track. It was far more of a kind of a poppy kind of single there, but done in a way that isn't cheesy, don't get me wrong, or generic. It's just done in a way which is very kind of almost Eskimo Callboyish. And that is a compliment. I love Eskimo Callboy. They're fantastic. But there's that feed off of the male and female, the way they harmonize in certain parts is just tremendous. And then you just simply have the guitar lines there, the rhythm guitar parts that, harmonize neatly with each other. But when they had the double tracking the vocals on top, it had this beautiful kind of glow to it. Just everything was so colorful and sparkly, and the bass and drums with the offbeat hi-hats and everything, and those hook sections especially were tremendous. We did take away layers and bring them back, and it was good in terms of the structuring and sort of like leveling overall compositionally, as well as production-wise. I would have maybe preferred maybe a little bit more space occasionally with less going on with the vocals in some parts, because I feel like we had enough going on and instrumentally for a lot of it. But then, of course, we never really had any alternative lead layers throughout the CP. There might have been occasional synth sequences or something like that. We had the synths at the start of this track. But it was less of a kind of a solo instrument and more of a kind of like an introductory, this is the ambient kind of theme kind of vibe to it, It's not like we had a dedicated solo or anything like that. It was more vocal oriented in that part, and that's totally fine. I just think in terms of the way that we approach the chord progressions of those hook sections, as well as how they mirrored some of the earlier ideas there, this being a little bit less through composed and more sort of, it tied up the album nicely. I think almost the through composed stuff was meant to represent those different dreams we had, and maybe the still of evening light, we wake up at the end and we kind of figure out, hey, this is kind of what's going on here. We have some sort of like we kind of understand more clearly what's on our mind and how we're perceiving things, and maybe we learned something from the experience. And it was almost weird. It's kind of like a sad dance where you're kind of still realizing things aren't necessarily how you want them to be, but you're also kind of glad that you are learning. So I kind of see the theme of this as trying to be sort of like, it's minor oriented, but it's also not as harsh and as unforgiving as previous riffs and ideas within previous tracks. And so I leave this feeling like this is an adequate conclusion. It finishes really neatly. You know, like in regards to the actual production for this track, the thoughts I have are similar. It was just nice to have more variety within the vocal layering while still allowing it to seem reasonably natural. And I'm glad that we made the decision not to have as much sort of kind of screamy stuff happening here. Not because I dislike it, but because I feel like it just might have been a little bit too on the nose or a little bit too much. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this EP from an act named BodyWithout, titled DEITY. Now, what do I think this EP is about? I do think it's basically about someone who is at night having these dreams, having to sort of self-evaluate, maybe coming across some uncomfortable truths. And we really are facing our demons here. I think there's parts of it that are love, self-worth, anger, and maybe some self-resentment, you know, feelings about other people, trying to sort of like not coping or not sort of accepting the conditions of how things are, confusion and uncertainty. And at the end, I think that even though we're still working some stuff out, we are remembering that we still have that kind of value, and there are people that are telling us that things are going to be okay, and we remember that. I think there is just it's basically the inner workings of someone going through these fever dreams maybe, or these sort of nightmares, almost seeing things from a looking down perspective on their own lives. And I think that's just a really interesting concept that I think is incredibly well handled here. It's one of the most raw expressions vocally I've had in quite a while there. I loved the clean parts. I loved the growls and the screams and the vocal fry. I like the sort of softer spoken parts. I appreciate the lady vocalists coming in later on with their sort of like kind of their clean parts in the CODA Indifferent song. It's not an album that is necessarily easy to listen to for people who are unfamiliar with metalcore and the kind of harder genres of music. The vocals are harder, but I think that the actual technique there is tremendous. It's not an operatic, incredibly wide, like in terms of the clean stuff. It's not like massively varied, like with all these different like crazy melodic tales. But I think the more traditional sort of like alternative kind of like punk stuff in like the mid 2000s, that kind of stuff, the vibe suits it. I don't think we needed to overcomplicate the sung melodies there. There's a lot of color between the keys and the different sort of like synth elements, the guitar, bass, and drums there, enough to make up for that. And so I think honestly, having the kind of more intense kind of growled, non-melodic stuff, the more kind of texture-based stuff is a nice contrast to that. I think the expression there is fantastic. Structurally, these songs range from through composed, the middle three, I think, as well as the fourth, as well as the initial track, to CODA Indifferent being more sort of like verse chorus oriented. And so we had ourselves more of a traditional single there in amongst a whole lot of the other chaos before it. And we had a lot of different, I spoke about the tracks individually per each one with their own sort of like mini conclusions, but it's just, you have so many twists and turns, and it truly is unpredictable. And there's these different bits where you have kind of Foley parts as well, or spoken parts, and they go quiet, and then bam, we play around with tempos. The percussion, for example, is absolutely ludicrous. Just the different sort of kick, snare, double kick parts, almost some machine gun parts. We have these feral, brutal sort of like breakdowns as well, where we're sort of China and sort of like cymbal oriented. We have these really neat sort of tom-filled sort of like 16th note grooves as well, and just all sorts of fun ideas on the drums. The guitars, typically the sort of like drop tune parts. There are some arpeggiated parts, some lead octave bits as well. We do sort of have some sort of string skip kind of da-da-da-da-da kind of stuff as well. We do mix around with the mid to high end, but a lot of it is also heavy as hell. CODA Indifferent, I keep going back to the one, is more sort of like traditional. It might have some more kind of power chord elements there that make it a bit more kind of sort of rocky and a bit more sort of like kind of anthemic. Other songs, they focus on the flat seconds and Phrygian modes, and they are just vicious and brutal and just super intense to listen to, but they sound so cool. The bass is a mixture of like bass guitars as well as 808s, and I adore that. I think that those were the right decisions in regards two tones there. We had some electronic and some analog elements, and you needed to maybe pair the correct one with the correct one. I think we did that here. It was very satisfying. And like outside of that, I feel like the bass typically stuck around the root notes of things and didn't overcomplicate things. The keys were typically on the right side, highlighting certain parts of the chord triads, different notes there. We had some melodies that were played on there as well, and there was some sort of synth sequencer parts such as encoder indifferent and other parts which were more sort of like almost trance-like. And it's just also the sound design from like Exorcism, the very first track, just how wide it is at the beginning. It's a very different feel at the start of the CP to the end. It is a massive sort of adventure you go on. I thoroughly recommend it if you're into this kind of music, or if you even listen to one of these tracks and like it, you're probably going to like the rest. But I especially appreciate that everything you've got within this EP is purpose-built and it's conscious of what it needs to accomplish, and you never feel like there's any filler. The tracks are short enough at like 2 to 3 minutes, 3 to 4 for a CODA, but that they never overstay their welcome. They're incredibly intriguing. There are some parts where I genuinely got goosebumps and chills just from how dope it sounded. I loved all the various themes within it. There was no point where I was like, man, I don't think that chord suits there. Typically, the use of chords and melodies, the scale shapes and modes, etc., matched the expression of what we're talking about, the style of vocals we were doing. It was all very well thought out. And production-wise, my comments that I've said throughout this review in terms of like the quality of the vocal recording, the extra processing on that without overcomplicating it, the compression of that as well, you can hear them in the mix really clearly. Both male and female vocals, you have the guitar tones are just phenomenal. I love the sound of the drums as well. They sidechain neatly. You can hear all the parts that kit across the stereo field. The synths and keys are positioned well within the stereo field. The music surrounds you in the headphones. If there is that occasional sort of like key at the start that's filtered, there's sound design to allow things to kind of expand as well. They're very well thought out there, as well as filtering on certain ingredients. The use of Foley is also a production thing, typically, to kind of get that to match. You mix that in, and sometimes they had some filtering or some reverb tails or something like that, or some sort of twisting and amalgamating. And it's just, there's dynamic range to it. It's full of life, and it's nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. Effectively, this is my extremely positive review, I suppose, of this EP from an act named BodyWithout, titled DEITY, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show some love via the various social medias and Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.